Nia had always known that moving to a new school wouldn't be easy. She had been the new girl before, but this time it felt different. This time, she wasn't just moving to another neighborhood or to a smaller town. This time, she was stepping into a world that felt unfamiliar in so many ways. She was moving from a school where she had grown up, where she had friends, to a school where no one knew her and she knew no one. She was nervous. She had always been proud of who she was, but the feeling of being an outsider was overwhelming. Her first day at Jefferson High was a mix of excitement and anxiety. Nia had a bright smile and a determined look on her face as she walked into the building, hoping the first day would go smoothly. Her mom had spent the morning giving her advice, telling her to stay true to herself and not to let anyone make her feel less than. But Nia knew that being the new girl was never easy, especially when she was the only black student in most of her classes. As she walked through the crowded hallways, she noticed how the students looked at her. Some stared with curiosity, while others whispered behind their hands. Nia had felt that kind of attention before, but it always made her feel uncomfortable. She walked with her head held high, trying not to show that she was feeling the pressure. She had learned a long time ago not to let the stares or whispers affect her. After all, she had karate to focus on something that always made her feel grounded. Nia's family had been involved in karate since she was 6 years old. Her parents were both black belts, and they had taught her to defend herself not just physically, but mentally too. Karate had given Nia a sense of discipline, confidence, and peace. She loved the calm focus it brought her, and it gave her a sense of control over situations that felt out of her hands. Karate taught her that no matter what, she could always find balance in herself. But no one at Jefferson High knew that Nia was a black belt. She hadn't told anyone. She had never liked bragging about her skills. The fact that she was skilled in karate wasn't something she thought anyone needed to know, at least not yet. She was here to make friends, to fit in. She didn't want to stand out for something that might make her seem different. In her first class, history, Nia was introduced to the group of students who would be her classmates for the rest of the year. They all seemed to know each other already, talking and laughing in groups. Nia sat in the back of the classroom, trying not to draw attention to herself. She listened carefully as the teacher began discussing the lesson, trying to take in the names of the other students around her. Then, there was Ashley. Ashley sat near the front of the class, with her long, straight hair and expensive-looking clothes. She had an air of confidence about her, one that made people gravitate toward her. It was clear that she was part of the popular crowd. But what stood out the most about Ashley was the way she looked at Nia. It wasn't a glance of curiosity or interest, it was a glance of superiority. Nia couldn't shake the feeling that Ashley had already made up her mind about her, without even knowing who she was. At first, Nia tried to ignore it. She focused on the lesson, keeping her eyes on the teacher and not looking around too much. But she could feel Ashley's gaze on her, like a weight pressing down on her. Every time Nia would catch a glimpse of her, Ashley would smile smugly, as if daring Nia to say something. As the class went on, Nia tried to put her attention back on the subject at hand. But when the bell rang, signaling the end of the period, she found herself walking out of the room to the sound of whispers. Ashley and her friends, a group of 4 girls, were standing near the door, giggling to each other. Nia's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure why, but she knew this wouldn't be the last time she'd feel the sting of their words. The next few days passed in a blur of awkward glances and whispered comments. Nia tried to make the best of it, but every time she entered a classroom or walked down a hallway, she could feel the eyes of the students on her. It didn't help that Ashley and her friends had a way of making Nia feel even more invisible and yet more obvious at the same time. They would make little comments, "I wonder where she's from," or "she doesn't look like she belongs here," and laugh quietly, just loud enough for Nia to hear. Nia didn't understand it. Why did they treat her this way? She hadn't done anything to them. She wasn't looking for attention. She just wanted to be left alone. Yet, every day, it felt like Ashley and her friends were looking for new ways to make her feel out of place. Nia would walk into the cafeteria to find them staring, or they would walk past her in the halls, laughing as they whispered to each other. Nia couldn't help but feel isolated. It was as if they had already decided who she was, without even knowing her. One afternoon, as Nia sat in the cafeteria, eating her lunch alone, she overheard Ashley's voice again. It was sharp and mocking, just like the other times. She didn't try to hide the way she spoke, and her friends laughed along with her. Nia's stomach churned. She wasn't used to this. Back at her old school, she had her friends. She had people who understood her. But here, it felt like she was invisible, and at the same time, like everyone was watching her every move. Later that day, during gym class, things took a turn. Ashley and her friends seemed to have come up with a new way to target Nia. They started making little comments about her appearance, her hair, even the way she dressed. Each remark was small, but they added up, like little cuts that stung. Nia didn't want to fight back. She didn't want to draw attention to herself even more. But it was getting harder to ignore their comments. The last straw came when Ashley and her friends began to whisper about Nia's clothes. "I bet she doesn't even know how to dress properly," Ashley said with a laugh. "She probably thinks that's cool, but it's just weird." Nia's face flushed, but she didn't say anything. She didn't know how to respond to that. But deep down, she knew one thing: she couldn't let this go on. It wasn't just about the words, they were making her feel like she didn't belong. And Nia had learned from her years of karate that it wasn't just about being tough on the outside. It was about being strong on the inside. The bullying didn't stop. In fact, it seemed to get worse with each passing day. Nia tried to brush it off, telling herself that high school was full of cliques and that things would settle down once she got to know people better. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. Ashley and her group of friends had made it their mission to make Nia's life difficult, and they didn't show any signs of stopping. It started with the small, passive-aggressive comments. In English class, when the teacher asked everyone to introduce themselves, Ashley made a remark about Nia's name. "That's an interesting name," she said with a fake smile. "Is it from a movie or something?" Her friends giggled, and Nia felt the heat of embarrassment creep up her neck. She just nodded, trying to pretend she didn't care. But inside, it stung. The taunts continued, each one more hurtful than the last. It wasn't just about Nia's name or the way she dressed, it was about her. They made fun of her accent when she spoke, even though she didn't have an accent. They laughed at the way she carried herself, like she was somehow out of place. Nia couldn't understand why they were so focused on her. It was like she had a target on her back from the moment she set foot in that school. Nia's confidence, which had once been so strong, started to waver. She began to second-guess herself. Maybe she wasn't dressing right. Maybe she wasn't speaking correctly. Maybe she was just too different for them to understand. Her mind was constantly filled with doubts, and every day she dreaded going to school. She couldn't escape the feeling that wherever she went, there was always someone watching her, ready to criticize. It was during gym class when things really escalated. The school had a policy of mixing students from different grades for physical education, so Nia found herself surrounded by unfamiliar faces. As soon as she entered the gym, she could feel Ashley's eyes on her. This time, Ashley wasn't even pretending to be subtle. She made sure everyone knew she was paying attention to Nia. "Hey, look who it is," Ashley said loudly, pointing in Nia's direction. "The new girl. Let's see if she can actually play basketball or if she's just going to sit there and look awkward." The group of girls burst into laughter, and Nia's stomach twisted. She had never been the best at basketball, but that didn't mean she was useless. She had played sports before, and she wasn't afraid of trying. But something about Ashley's challenge felt different. It wasn't just about the game, it was about proving that she belonged, proving that she was more than just the new girl. Nia tried to ignore Ashley and focus on the game. She ran to the court, joining the others in a game of basketball. At first, she felt awkward, trying to figure out where she fit in. But as the game went on, she began to feel more comfortable. The ball came to her, and for a brief moment, she thought about passing it to someone else. But then she remembered her karate training, the discipline, the focus, the power. She had learned to trust herself in moments like this. With a deep breath, Nia took the ball and made a shot. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. She didn't care about being the best, she just wanted to show that she wasn't going to let anyone dictate how she played. The other students looked at her in surprise, some of them nodding with approval. Even Ashley seemed taken aback for a moment. But Nia didn't let it go to her head. She knew that one good shot wouldn't change the way Ashley and her friends saw her. It wouldn't erase the months of teasing and whispers. No matter how hard Nia tried, it seemed like nothing would make Ashley and her group stop. They had made up their minds about her, and nothing she did could change that. The real trouble started a week later. Nia had gotten used to the whispers and the cold shoulders, but this time, it felt different. As she walked through the hallways after gym class, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, expecting to see one of her classmates, but instead, it was Ashley and her friends. They were walking toward her, with a look in their eyes that Nia couldn't quite place. It wasn't just casual, it was deliberate. "You think you're so much better than everyone, don't you?" Ashley said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can just come in here and be one of us, but you'll never be one of us." Nia's heart raced. She didn't understand where this was coming from. She had never tried to be anything other than herself. She hadn't even tried to make friends with them. All she wanted was to get through the school year without drawing attention to herself. But Ashley and her friends weren't interested in letting her be. Before Nia could respond, Ashley stepped forward. "You know what? I think it's time we show you just how much you don't belong here." The words sent a chill down Nia's spine, but she didn't back away. She stood her ground, trying to keep her cool. She knew that she couldn't let them see her fear. If she showed them that they had control over her, they would keep going. But Nia didn't have the energy to argue. She just wanted to get to her next class. Ashley gave a sharp, mocking laugh before turning away, but Nia could still feel the sting of her words. It was as if they had made it their mission to break her down, to make her feel like she wasn't good enough. No matter what Nia did, it seemed like they would always find a reason to tear her down. The next day, as Nia walked through the hallway, she felt something different. She wasn't sure why, but it felt like something was about to happen. It was as if the tension in the air had reached its breaking point. She felt a pit in her stomach, and her hands clenched into fists at her sides. It wasn't long before she saw Ashley and her friends walking toward her. But this time, there was something in their eyes that made Nia's heart skip a beat. She couldn't tell exactly what it was, but she knew it wasn't good. Ashley stepped forward, a cruel smile on her face. "You know, I think we've been too nice to you," she said. "Maybe it's time to teach you a lesson." Before Nia could react, Ashley and her friends grabbed her arms, pulling her toward the locker room. The rest of the students in the hall didn't even notice, or maybe they were too scared to speak up. Nia's heart raced as they shoved her into an empty locker, the door slamming shut with a loud bang. At first, Nia couldn't believe it. She had been trapped. Her mind raced, trying to process what was happening. But as the moments passed and the reality set in, one thought filled her mind: she couldn't let them win. Nia's heart pounded in her chest as the door of the locker slammed shut. She could feel the cold metal pressing against her body, and for a moment, she thought she might not be able to breathe. The space was tiny, cramped, and dark, and the scent of old gym clothes and musty air made it even worse. Her mind raced as she struggled to stay calm. She had been locked in a locker before, as part of some school prank, but this felt different. This time, there was no one around to laugh it off. This time, it was serious. The laughter of Ashley and her friends echoed in her ears as they walked away, leaving her alone in the locker. Nia's fists clenched in frustration. She had never felt so powerless before. All she wanted was to get out, to show them that they couldn't just treat her this way. But right now, all she had was her mind and her willpower. At first, Nia panicked. Her breathing became shallow as the walls of the locker seemed to close in on her. Her arms and legs were pressed tightly against the metal sides, and it felt as though there was no room to move. She couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything except for the pounding of her heart in her ears. She had never been in a situation quite like this before. But then, she remembered something. Nia's karate instructor had always told her that in moments of stress and pressure, it was important to stay calm, to focus on her breathing. He had taught her how to control her body and her mind, even in the most difficult situations. This was no different. If she could focus, if she could clear her mind, she could find a way out. Nia took a slow, deep breath, focusing on the air filling her lungs. She could feel the tension in her body slowly start to ease. She closed her eyes, blocking out the darkness of the locker, and imagined herself back in the dojo. In her mind, she saw the smooth, controlled movements of the martial arts techniques she had learned over the years. She could almost hear the rhythm of her instructor's voice as he guided her through the motions. Focus on your breath. Clear your mind. Trust in your body. She breathed in deeply once again and then slowly exhaled, letting go of the fear that had been building inside her. Slowly, Nia became more aware of her surroundings. The tightness in her chest loosened, and the sense of panic began to fade. She was still trapped, still locked in the locker, but now she felt in control. She could do this. She had to. Nia shifted slightly, trying to find a more comfortable position. The locker was small, and her legs were cramped, but she managed to adjust herself just enough to feel a little less suffocated. She took another deep breath, focusing on the task at hand. If she was going to get out, she needed to figure out how to move the door, how to break free from the confines of this tiny space. She pressed her back against the metal, trying to push against the sides. She could feel the edges of the door, the cool surface beneath her fingers. It wasn't much, but it was something. Nia's mind began to work through the problem logically, just as she had been taught in karate. She needed to apply force in the right place, use leverage to her advantage. Nia wasn't sure how long she had been in the locker at this point. Time seemed to stretch on forever, each second feeling like an eternity. Her body ached from being in such a cramped position, but she refused to give in to the discomfort. She had to keep trying. She placed her hands on the edges of the locker door and pushed with all the strength she could muster. At first, nothing happened. The door didn't budge. But Nia didn't stop. She knew that with the right technique, with the right focus, she could make it work. She remembered the exercises she'd done in karate, the way her instructor had taught her to use her legs and hips to generate more power. It wasn't just about arm strength, it was about using her entire body, about aligning her movements to create maximum force. Nia adjusted her position, bringing her legs up and pushing against the inside of the locker door. Slowly but surely, the door began to shift. It wasn't much, but it was progress. Nia pushed again, her legs straining as she pressed against the metal. The door inched open, just a little, but enough to give her hope. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized that she was actually getting closer to freedom. The seconds felt like minutes, and the minutes felt like hours. Nia's muscles burned with the effort, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. She had to get out of this locker, had to show Ashley and her friends that they couldn't trap her. She wasn't weak. She wasn't helpless. She had strength within her, strength that they hadn't counted on. With one final push, the locker door gave way. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't graceful, but Nia finally managed to break free. The door swung open, and she stepped out, breathing deeply as she straightened herself. She felt the cold air of the hallway rush in, and for a moment, she just stood there, letting the relief wash over her. Her body was sore, her muscles aching from the effort, but she was free. And she wasn't going to let what had just happened slide. She had been humiliated, trapped, but she had fought her way out. And now it was time to show Ashley and her friends just who they were dealing with. As Nia stood there, trying to shake off the dizziness from being cramped in such a small space, she heard footsteps approaching. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned, and there they were, Ashley and her friends, standing just a few feet away, their faces filled with a mixture of shock and confusion. Ashley's voice was sharp, her expression one of surprise. How are you out of there?" she asked, her eyes wide. Nia didn't answer right away. Instead, she met Ashley's gaze with a calm confidence that surprised even her. She stood tall, her posture straight, and looked Ashley directly in the eyes. "You shouldn't mess with people you don't understand," Nia said, her voice steady. Ashley's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her friends stood there, silent, clearly unsure of what to say next. The laughter and mocking remarks from earlier had disappeared, replaced by a tense silence. Nia had expected them to taunt her, to laugh at her, but instead, they seemed to be taken aback by her composure. Without saying another word, Nia turned and walked away, her steps steady and sure. She didn't need to prove anything to them. She had already shown them exactly who she was, someone who wouldn't back down, no matter the situation. As she walked down the hallway, her thoughts were clear. This wasn't over, but it was a start. Nia knew that she had to keep going, that she couldn't let Ashley and her friends break her. And most importantly, she knew she wasn't alone. She had her strength, and she had her will. The following days were a strange mix of relief and tension for Nia. She had survived the worst. The immediate threat from Ashley and her friends had passed, but the emotional toll lingered. Nia couldn't help but wonder how long things would stay calm. Would Ashley and her friends just forget about what happened, or would they find new ways to make her life difficult? As she walked into school each morning, Nia kept her head high. She had learned to block out the whispers and the stares, though it wasn't always easy. The students who had once made fun of her now seemed to view her differently. Some even gave her a nod of respect, as if they had finally seen her strength. Yet, every time she passed by Ashley, there was a slight tension in the air. Ashley's friends would quickly look away, pretending to focus on something else, but Nia could still feel their eyes on her. It was as if they couldn't decide whether they wanted to keep up the act of being friends or whether they wanted to keep up the pretense of bullying her. But Nia wasn't worried anymore. They had lost their power over her. One afternoon, after gym class, Nia was walking toward her locker when she noticed something strange. Ashley and her group were standing near the lockers, but this time, they weren't laughing or making fun of her. They seemed hesitant. As Nia approached, she could hear them talking in low voices, and when Ashley saw Nia, she froze. There was a brief moment of silence before Ashley spoke, her tone soft. "Nia, I wanted to talk to you about what happened," Ashley said, her voice not as sharp as it used to be. It caught Nia off guard. She had expected more insults or sarcastic comments, but this was different. Nia raised an eyebrow, unsure of how to respond. She hadn't expected Ashley to approach her so directly, especially after everything that had happened. "What's there to talk about?" Nia asked, keeping her voice steady. Ashley bit her lip, looking down at the ground before looking back at Nia. "I know I messed up. And I'm sorry, she said quietly. I wasn't thinking about how wrong it was to lock you in that locker. I was just trying to be funny, you know. For a moment, Nia stood there, stunned. She had never expected Ashley to apologize. She had always seen Ashley as someone who couldn't care less about anyone but herself, someone who thrived on making others feel small. But now, standing in front of Nia, there was no hint of the arrogance or superiority that Nia had grown used to. Apology accepted, Nia said simply, though she didn't completely believe it. She wasn't sure if Ashley truly understood the gravity of what had happened, but Nia didn't want to drag the conversation out any longer. But don't do it again. Ashley nodded, looking almost relieved. I won't. I promise. As Nia turned to walk away, she felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, she was glad to have it over with, but on the other hand, it left her feeling uncertain. Was this a genuine change, or was Ashley just trying to save face? Either way, Nia didn't have time to worry about it. She had more important things to focus on. Over the next few weeks, things seemed to settle down. Nia didn't have to look over her shoulder every time she walked through the halls, and the whispers became less frequent. She started making new friends, real friends who didn't care about her background or her appearance. They liked her for who she was, and that felt like a huge relief. One of those friends was Maya, a girl she met in science class. Maya was funny, smart, and easy to talk to, and they quickly became close. Maya had heard about what happened with Ashley and the locker, but she didn't judge Nia for it. Instead, she admired how Nia had handled the situation. I don't know if I could have stayed that calm, Maya said one day as they walked to lunch together. You're way stronger than I am. Nia smiled at her. I don't know about that. It's not always about being strong on the outside. Sometimes it's just about holding your ground, you know. Maya nodded, her eyes bright. I get it. And honestly, I'm glad you're here. You've got something about you that makes people notice. It's not just about karate, it's about how you carry yourself. I think that's why you didn't let them get to you. Nia felt a warmth in her chest at Maya's words. It felt good to be seen for who she was, for her strength, her mind, and not just her ability to fight back. She was more than just the girl who had been locked in a locker. She was Nia, someone who could face adversity and keep going. As the weeks passed, Nia continued to gain confidence. She joined the school's karate club and began practicing with other students who shared her passion. It felt good to be in a space where she didn't have to worry about fitting in. In the dojo, everyone was focused on the same goal, improving themselves. It wasn't about popularity or fitting into a mold, it was about growing stronger, both physically and mentally. Nia found peace in the dojo, just as she had when she was younger, and it reminded her of the lessons she had learned throughout her life. One afternoon, as Nia was practicing her forms in the gym, she saw a familiar face standing in the doorway. It was Maya, who had come to watch her practice. Maya grinned and waved at her. Keep going, you're doing great. Maya called out. Nia smiled and nodded. There was something about having people in her life who supported her that made everything feel a little easier. It wasn't just about karate, it was about having people who saw her for who she really was. It was a reminder that she didn't need to prove herself to anyone except herself. Later that day, after practice, Nia found herself walking through the hallways with Maya. As they passed by the lockers, Nia noticed something. Ashley was standing with a few of her friends, chatting and laughing. But this time, there was no tension in the air. Ashley wasn't staring at Nia with the same superiority she had before. Instead, she gave Nia a small, almost imperceptible nod. Nia looked at Maya, who raised an eyebrow. Are you going to say anything? She asked. Nia shook her head. No, I don't need to. They know where I stand. And with that, Nia realized just how much she had grown. She wasn't the same girl who had walked into Jefferson High months ago. She had learned how to stand tall in the face of adversity, how to let go of the things that didn't matter, and how to find peace within herself. Nia had fought her way out of that locker, but it wasn't just about escaping physical confinement, it was about breaking free from the limitations that others tried to place on her. And now, as she walked through the halls with her head held high, Nia knew that she had finally found her place. Not because of anything anyone else had said or done, but because of who she had become. She was strong, capable, and worthy of respect, and no one could take that away from her. As the weeks turned into months, Nia found herself growing stronger, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. The things that had once caused her so much anxiety, the whispers, the stares, the bullying, no longer had the same effect on her. She had learned to rise above it all, and in doing so, she found a new sense of confidence. It wasn't just about surviving high school anymore. Nia was beginning to thrive. She had made real friends, people who cared about her for who she was, not because she fit into some mold or because she was the new girl. She had found a place where she belonged, where she didn't have to pretend to be anything she wasn't. One day, as she sat in the cafeteria with Maya, she realized just how much had changed. The group of popular students that had once made her life so difficult was no longer a threat. They had stopped trying to make her feel small, and even Ashley, the girl who had been the source of so much of her pain, had been keeping her distance. Nia didn't know whether it was because they had finally realized how wrong they had been or because they were simply bored with trying to mess with her, but whatever it was, Nia felt free. And yet, even though things had improved, she knew she couldn't let her guard down completely. High school was a place where drama was always lurking around the corner, and Nia had learned the hard way that just when you think everything is going fine, something can change in an instant. One afternoon, after school, Nia received a text from Maya, "Meet me by the gym after practice. I've got something to show you." Nia's curiosity piqued. She had no idea what Maya could be referring to, but she knew one thing: she couldn't miss the chance to hang out with her friend. After practice, Nia made her way to the gym, where Maya was waiting for her by the entrance. "Hey." Nia greeted, smiling. "What's up?" Maya grinned, her excitement almost contagious. "You're not going to believe this. There's going to be a new karate tournament, and they're inviting students from all over the city to compete. I think you should sign up." Nia's eyes widened. A tournament? She had never competed in one before, but the idea of showing off her skills, of proving how far she had come, was incredibly appealing. She had always kept her karate practice to herself, never showing anyone just how good she was. But now, with the confidence she had built over the past months, the idea of stepping into a tournament felt like the right challenge. "I don't know," Nia began, hesitating. "What if I'm not good enough?" Maya shook her head. "Nia, you're more than good enough. I've seen you practice, and you're amazing. This could be your chance to really shine." The more Nia thought about it, the more she realized that Maya was right. She had spent so much of her life trying to stay under the radar, to avoid standing out. But now, things were different. She had learned to face her fears head on. Why not push herself even further? Why not show everyone that she was strong, not just because she survived, but because she thrived? "Okay," Nia said with a smile, her voice filled with determination. "I'll do it." Maya's eyes lit up. "Yes. I knew you'd say yes. It's going to be so much fun. We'll train together, and you'll totally crush it." The thought of the tournament excited Nia, but it also made her nervous. She had been training in karate for years, but competing was a whole new ball game. She had always focused on improving herself, but now she would have to perform under pressure, in front of an audience. There was a lot riding on it, but Nia wasn't going to back down. The following weeks were filled with intense training. Every day after school, Nia would meet Maya at the gym, and together they practiced different moves, sharpened their techniques, and prepared for the tournament. At first, Nia felt like she was still getting used to the idea of competing. There were moments when she doubted herself, wondering if she was truly ready. But with each practice, she grew more confident. It wasn't just about winning, it was about pushing herself, about showing that she could take on challenges and overcome them. She had learned that it was okay to be nervous, as long as she didn't let it stop her. The lessons she had learned from karate control, patience, focus were becoming more important than ever. The day of the tournament arrived, and Nia was both nervous and excited. She had never been in a competition like this before, but she knew that she had prepared for it. She wasn't the same girl who had walked into Jefferson High months ago. She was stronger now, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. When Nia walked into the arena, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. The gymnasium was packed with people, spectators, coaches, and competitors. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. But as the announcer called the competitors to the mat, Nia felt a calmness wash over her. She was here to do something she loved. This was her moment to shine. The first round was nerve-wracking. Nia's opponent was fast, and she had to stay focused on every move. But as the fight went on, Nia found her rhythm. She remembered everything she had learned, every lesson her karate instructor had taught her. Her movements were smooth, controlled, and powerful. She was in the zone. With every match, Nia's confidence grew. She won the first few rounds, each one bringing her closer to the final match. But it wasn't just about the victories, it was about how she had grown throughout the process. Nia had stepped into that tournament with doubts, but by the end of it, she had silenced them all. When it was finally time for the championship round, Nia felt a rush of adrenaline. Her final opponent was tough, fast and skilled, but Nia wasn't intimidated. She had come this far, and now it was time to give it her all. The match was intense, each fighter pushing the other to their limits. But in the end, it was Nia who came out on top. She stood there, breathless and victorious, as the crowd cheered. For the first time in a long while, Nia allowed herself to savor the moment. She had done it. She had proven to herself and to everyone else that she was capable of so much more than she had ever imagined. Later, as she stood with Maya, holding her trophy, Nia couldn't help but smile. "I didn't think I could do it," she admitted. Maya grinned and slapped her on the back. "I told you. You're amazing." And Nia realized that it wasn't just the trophy that mattered, it was the journey she had taken to get there. She had faced her fears, pushed through the doubts, and proven that she was more than capable. She had found her voice, her strength, and her place in the world. As she looked around at the people who had supported her along the way, Maya, her other friends, even the teachers who had encouraged her, Nia knew that she had truly found where she belonged. And no one, not even the bullies who had once tried to break her, could take that away.